Welcome to the Visible and Unstoppable podcast. I'm your host, Louise Kirk, and I support women to be seen, sell, and succeed. And today we have a special guest, Nicki Laberge. And Nicki is a woman's self-worth and freedom facilitator. Nicki, I would love to know more about what a woman's self-worth and freedom facilitator does.
Yeah, so the title, the name, kind of came to me as I was deciding how I was going to approach helping women. So, based on my own personal experience and everything I have gone through, I realized how much of the messaging and societal conditioning I was living my life under, and how it had affected me in so many ways, from my marriage to being a mom to just how I ran my business. It was a part of everything. And as I kind of worked through again how I wanted to show up and help women, I realized I want women to be free of all of the societal conditioning and the expectations that are placed on us as to how we need to show up in the world and just what's expected of us as women. So if you think about how often we are expected to sacrifice what we need and want, how we're supposed to make sure everyone around us is comfortable at the expense of our own comfort. There's so many examples of it, of the conditioning and messaging that we receive as women. So, and I think that has a huge impact on our self-worth, because what I think it does is it disconnects us as women from who we really are. So we try to live up to these standards, these expectations, live up to this messaging we see everywhere around us. And when we don't do that, we get disconnected from who we are. So I want to free us from that conditioning and messaging, and I want to reconnect us with our self-worth.
I love it. And as a woman, I 100% feel all of that. And I know many of my clients and listeners do too, because as women, especially women in business, we're juggling so many expectations that are put on ourselves, but put from others. But one of the biggest challenges I've found speaking to women is even when they're aware of, hey, actually, this is like social conditioning. I feel like there's an expectation on me because I'm a woman, but even when they're aware of it, they still hold tightly onto it and still continue to perform those roles or responsibilities for that fear of, well, if I don't do this, then maybe I won't be perceived as a good wife or a good mother or a good woman. So, how do you support women once they've even identified the fact that it's social conditioning rather than just who they are, but to be able to have the confidence, I guess, and bravery to be able to say, but you know what, I'm going to choose something different.
That is a great question. And I think the first step is definitely that self-awareness, right? So recognizing, okay, there's something going on here. I see how I'm supposed to be living my life. I see how the world is telling me I should live my life and who I need to be as a woman. That's really the first step, is recognizing that you don't have to live that way, but it's really hard because our value as women is tied to so many things outside of us. It's tied to how we show up for other people. It's tied to how we raise our children. It's tied to everything that we sacrifice. It's tied to our relationship status, right? If you think about Miss, Mrs., Ms., well, that tells everyone our relationship status. Men are just Mr. So they have nothing that ties their value to whether they're in a relationship or not. We know if a woman's divorced because they're Ms. We know if they're single because they're Miss. And we know if they're in a relationship, which is what society wants, or if they're married because they're Mrs. So it's kind of recognizing those things first. That is the first step. Then it's making the conscious choice to say, I want to live differently. I want my value to come from inside of me, not from all of these external factors. So there is that element of choosing. And I always talk with the women that I'm coaching, two key pieces. Choosing, you have to consciously choose to heal, and you have to consciously choose to do it every day, because it's not one decision and then you do it and you're good. Healing doesn't work like that. It's a conscious decision you have to make over and over. And you have to give yourself permission to not always get it right, permission to be messy, permission to not be okay, because that's a really big part of deconstructing all of this and then figuring out where your real value comes from. You're going to be messy and you're not going to be okay in the middle of this, because everything you thought your value was tied to is now gone as you go through the process. And it's like, okay, well, if that isn't what if that's not where my value comes from. Where does it come from? So we have to work on that and build that. So there's definitely a messy middle here. So I don't know if that fully answered your question, but
I wish healing was a one day, one event. We were
wouldn't that be
done.
nice?
Wouldn't that be nice? So when women do make that commitment, they make that choice of, I'm not going to show up like this anymore. I'm going to choose me. How do they start to find out who they are outside of all of that conditioning that tells them who they should be?
There are a lot of tools. I mean, journaling is one that I'm a huge fan of. We all talk about journaling. Most of us, especially as women, have journaled at some point in our lives, but it's not just always putting pen on paper. Sometimes you need the right journal prompts to kind of get what you're actually feeling in your body. Because a lot of times we try and think our way through things or think our way out of things, and we intellectualize everything. What we need to do is drop into our bodies and feel. Now, it's not an easy thing to do, but what journaling can do is as you're writing, especially pen on paper, I never encourage people to type when they journal. It's always pen on paper because that connects the different parts of our brain and helps us connect with the parts of us that we actually need to drop into in our bodies. So I think that's a big part of it, is understanding what we're feeling in our bodies and then recognizing when we feel it and what it is so that we can work through it. So that's a big part of it. Awareness of what we feel in our bodies and when. Journaling can help with that. Learning to set boundaries. So once we kind of get an idea of a few things, we can a little more easily, again, as women, setting boundaries is not an easy thing to do. And what a lot of women do is we over-explain. So be like, as we start doing the boundary setting stuff, we're like, oh, you know what? I can't do that today because I have to pick my kid up from school. I have to do this. I have to do that. I have to do a million things. And I just can't. I'm really sorry. And then we apologize, right? And so we've just over-explained when the other person really didn't need to know any of that. So it's learning that a simple boundary can be, I'm not available for that right now. Thank you for thinking of me. So it can still be kind. It can be clear, but it doesn't have to over-explain. You don't have to tell your whole life story just to say no to someone, which is something, I mean, I have a lot of clients that are constantly, and friends, messaging, being like, okay, I need to say no to this person for this, but this is what I want to say. And I'm like, whoa, no, no, no. We're going to like strip this back and all you need to say is this. And so the other part of it is, again, the journaling kind of helps you dive into some things. Learning how to set the boundaries is huge. Learning how to hold the boundaries is the next step. And then the actual hardest part is how people react to them. Because if you have people in your life that have never been around when you have set boundaries or when you start choosing you and putting yourself first and stop focusing on everybody else's comfort and start turning that energy inwards on you, people get really upset. They don't like it.
Boundaries is such a huge thing. And what I found and what I always share with my clients is that we always think that we're setting boundaries for others, but really the boundaries are for ourselves. And so for those who tend to over explain themselves or justify themselves, it's because they're more worried about how they feel inside about setting the boundary because they have not fully adopted that boundary themselves yet. And so they're always afraid of that response from the other person
Yes.
or another person oversteps their boundaries, which really is, again, I don't believe people can overstep your boundary. If you have a boundary and you say no and you hold your boundary, then it's usually that people are either not fully aware of the boundary, they're not quite sure yet because maybe it's their first time implementing that boundary, or because you've often said yes. You've given in to the boundary, right? And then you feel something about it. You get annoyed because you're like, how dare they? I said I didn't want to do this, but now I'm doing it. And it's like, well, actually, you didn't respect your own boundary. You didn't hold your own boundary. And so, of course, the other person's like, well, that's not really a boundary, right? It's like kids.
Yes.
That's always reminds me of my kids with
Yes.
go, can I have this? And you're like, no.
No.
Can I have this? No. Can I? And you go, yes, yes, just have it. Right. So then they're like, well, I've learned if I just keep saying, can I, she's going to give in because it's not really a firm boundary or rule because she
Yeah.
said yes.
And that's the hard part. And that's why I always kind of teach boundaries in the three parts. First, you have to learn how to set it, right? So you need to get comfortable with the language and comfortable with actually setting it with people. Then you have to learn how to hold it because people, again, they're not doing it. Most people are not pushing back on a boundary out of disrespect. They're doing it because, like you said, they're not used to it or they don't know how to, like, it's new and they don't know how to respond to it. And so they're just kind of pushing back or they're used to you giving in. And then once you get good at those first two pieces, then you have to recognize that how the other person reacts is on them. You've already done your part. You've said it. You've held it. They're going to react and that's okay because it's new for them, but it does tell you more about that other person and your relationship. So if they do push back, if they do get disrespectful, then you can decide what you're going to do next with that relationship, whatever it is.
Yeah. And as we're starting to delve a bit into the relationship side, because I know you help women with many things, but one of the things you do specialize in is supporting women who are coming to the end of their relationships. Either they've had a divorce or they're in that kind of, stages of exiting their relationship, should I say. Can you tell me more about how you came to specialize in there?
Well, I got here from my own divorce. So, what I realized when I went through my divorce was, well, I realized so many things. I'm going to try and keep this as short as I can. One of them is we talk a lot about how, especially women, do this, where we grieve our marriage while we're in it. So, while we're making the decision to leave, we're grieving. What I learned was I actually wasn't grieving my marriage when I was in it. I thought I was. What I was doing was processing it. So, I was processing everything that wasn't working anymore, all of the times that, all of the arguments we'd had, everything. I was processing it all, and it got me to that decision that I was ready to leave, that we were at the point of I can't even say the word. It's Monday. It's my first day back after the holidays. But when you just can't fix things.
Yeah.
And so when I came out of my divorce, because I thought I had already grieved, right? This is like in the moment, I thought I had grieved. I thought it was going to be really easy. I thought I was going to just move out with my daughter and have this amazing life. And I think that happened for the first little bit. And then my grief kind of caught up with me, even though it was my decision, even though the marriage was definitely over, there was no chance of reconciliation at all. I started to grieve and I realized that you have to grieve. And I realized over my 10-year period, or I guess it's been 10 years now. So I guess it would have been about 7 or 8 years. I realized how much there was to grieve. Now, in my situation, I lost my mom and brother in back-to-back years after my divorce. So I was grieving a lot of things at the same time. So my grieving process definitely took longer because of that. But it was also losing my mom and brother that made me realize how much I still needed to grieve the end of my marriage. And it wasn't, I'm going to rephrase that. It wasn't so much the end of my marriage I needed to grieve. It was the future I had pictured for myself. It was the family I wanted my daughter to have. It was so many things that society taught me I should want and that society taught me I needed to have. And so I wasn't just grieving again the end of the marriage. I was grieving the future that I thought I had. And I was grieving that societal messaging and that conditioning that made me think the only way for me to be happy was to be a wife and a mother and have everything. And so I had to let go of a lot of things. And in that time, in that process, I realized how hard that was. And I realized there's not a lot of support out there. At least there wasn't, a few years ago. And so I decided I wanted to be the support for women going through this that I didn't have. So I took everything that I learned, everything I went through, everything that I implemented to heal and to grow and to evolve and to build the life I have now, and I put it into my coaching. And that's how I got here. My own personal experience, everything I went through, everything that worked for me. And now I just want other women to move through that process so much quicker than I did.
And when, from your experience, for the women who do come to you, now I'm assuming with the assumption of no abuse, right? Everyone can just agree if there's abuse, whether it's from a
Yes.
male or a female, you leave. But for women who, because what I experience is I get, some of my clients or the women that I speak to, they were like, oh, they feel like they want to leave the relationship, but he's a good man or good enough man. Like he's not a bad man, he's not abusive. And so they almost feel like there's no justification to leave. What, in your experience, do you find are the main causes for women wanting to actually leave a relationship or divorce outside of abuse?
Yeah, I think like you just said, lots of women are leaving good men. The difference is they're not good partners. So someone can be a good person, but that doesn't automatically make them a good partner. It doesn't mean they know how to show up as a partner for the other person. And what I believe has happened, and this is again personal experience, coaching experience, is men were conditioned and still believe a lot of them that their main job is to provide and protect. Cliche, I know, but provide and protect. And
Yes.
women essentially manage the house and take care of the kids and are responsible for everything else. Now, in the world we live in today, it's either one of two things. Women want to work. They want to be outside of the home. A lot of women still want to be moms, but they also want to have their own financial independence and their own, a little bit of control over their lives, which we should be able to have. And I think the other part of it is, um, I kind of lost my train of thought there. So where was I going with that? Women, yeah, they want to have all of that. So they're choosing to work or they have to work. Those are the two things. And in either situation, whether it's a choice or because they have to financially to support the household, because living is just expensive now, then they're still doing everything and the man is still providing and protecting. But we don't really need men to protect us anymore. So they're providing, and a lot of men think that that is being a partner. So they're not showing up with emotional support. They're not showing up to help. And I don't even like the words, I don't even like saying help around the house because it's not helping. It is you live in the house, you run the house together. It shouldn't be up to the woman to make sure that things get done and for the husband to help. These two people need to show up together and be like, oh, I see something that needs to be done. I am just going to do that. And that's what a lot of women are facing is they are doing, again, these terms are out there everywhere, but they're carrying the emotional labor. They're doing all the emotional labor and they're carrying the mental load. And men don't recognize that, or, the men that we're speaking of that are being divorced don't recognize that because they don't even know what that is. They have no idea that we are regulating everyone's emotions in the house to keep everyone happy while sacrificing ourselves. So we don't get to take care of ourselves and what we're feeling because we're so busy making sure everybody else is emotionally regulated. And a lot of men have no idea what that even means. And it's hard to explain it to them. So I think it just boils down to someone can be a good person and not a good partner.
Absolutely. And I think I do hear this a lot. And we hear a lot in the news too around how women are all now exiting relationships and choosing not to enter into new
Yeah.
ones. And a lot of the research shows that it is usually down to this disproportionate level of responsibilities in the house and as well working and earning and contributing financially. And I feel like there's this big gap in the conversation around when we're talking about providing and protecting, that it's not that women don't want these things, they just want them in a different form. The
Yes.
protection's not against a random guy who might come to attack because there's a good chance in societies that we live in that it's less likely to happen, right? But the protection might be looking like in a different way or shape or form. And the same as providing. Yes, they probably still do want some form of financial support or contribution as you're both contributing, but it's more around like that emotional support
Yes.
or the support around, like you said, around the home, having that division of responsibility.
And emotional safety. And again, I think this is language that a lot of men are just starting to hear and understand. And that's just it. We don't necessarily need to be protected from the physical threat out there. What we want is emotional safety. So we want to be able to go to our partner and say, hey, this bothered me, or when this happened, I felt this, and not have the other person get defensive and turn it around and blame us and bring up all these other things. We want them to kind of go, oh, I didn't realize. I'm sorry. I will work on that. Like there's such an emotional maturity. And I feel like that is missing in a lot of these relationships. And I feel like it's a huge opportunity for men and women to learn and grow together on this. But right now, it feels like women have been doing a lot of the work and men are a few steps behind. It's not saying they aren't catching up or they can't catch up, but right now, and that's why a lot of women are exiting relationships and not wanting to enter into new ones because we're not getting that emotional safety and that emotional support. And the dynamics of relationships have just changed. And that's where women are at right now.
And when women do come to you, so say they've gone through their divorce and they realized, do you know what? This is not as liberating and as happy as I thought I was going to feel. And I think, like you said, it's a bit of that mourning of like, well, I pictured my life like this. And now what is that going to look like? So when they come to you, what reasons do they come to you for, and how do you help them?
A lot of times they're just feeling stuck. So they're stuck and they're confused. They don't understand because the marriage was over. They made the decision to leave. Everything was supposed to be great. And then when it's not, they don't understand why and they get confused and they just get stuck there. So that's a lot of the reasons that women come to me. Then what we do is we dive into that in so many different ways. So the first thing, it's called root cause therapy. So it's interesting because I coach women, mostly women, who have come out of a divorce. We don't actually talk a lot about their marriage. So we're not diving into why their marriage failed. We're not talking about what they could have done different or how to, build them up for the next relationship. We are working solely on them. We are taking all that energy that they have turned and put on everybody else and turning it inwards. So the first thing is root cause therapy. So this is a modality that allows us to go into the subconscious mind and uncover limiting beliefs. So these limiting beliefs could be there from childhood. They could be from the marriage. They could be from any circumstance or situation or compounding trauma that someone has experienced. And what we do once we uncover those limiting beliefs, we release them. And when we release them, we can actually take a step back and go, oh, well, if I'm not that, who am I? Because we can't really figure out who we are if we don't know who we've been or why we've been the way we are or why we've made the decisions that we've made. So we have to get to that root cause first. So the root cause therapy is step one. So uncovering them and releasing the limiting beliefs. Then once we've done that, we can actually dive into, okay, now we can regulate your nervous system because you're not living from a place that you weren't aware of. You can actually take control and make conscious decisions. And then we get to figure out who they want to be in their next chapter. So what lights them up? We talk about boundaries. We teach them how to implement and hold and manage responses and just really diving into a different kind of self-care, because we all know the self-care that it's get a massage, have a bubble bath, pour yourself a glass of wine, right? And those things are amazing. I love those things. I do them regularly for myself. But true self-care is taking care of yourself on such a deeper level and reconnecting with joy. So then it's, again, so obviously there's some steps here. Once we've got the nervous system regulated, once we've learned how to set and hold boundaries, then we can dive into the self-care piece. And what really lights you up? Do you need to reconnect with a hobby? Do you need to find a new hobby? Do you want to go take a cooking class? Do you want to go join a running club? Do you want to go take martial arts? Like, what lights you up? And all of those things just connect women to a part of themselves they've probably never connected with because they didn't give themselves permission to. They weren't allowed to.
You're right. And I think especially women in business, they get so busy. It's like you're in your business and then
Mhm.
if you're also a mum, you're a mum, you're a business, you're just wearing all of these hats that you don't often have unless you purposefully create it, this time to go, well, what's just something fun that has no purpose, right? It's not because I have to get fit. It's not because I have to do something for the kids. It's not because I have to do something for my business. It's just purely enjoyment for no
Yes.
logical reason other than just it's something I enjoy doing. And I
The
think a lot of that because
purpose,
they never had the time, right? They never had the
yeah.
time before.
And the purpose is joy. And I think, like you said, a lot of women are wearing all the hats. And so we kind of have to strip away those labels. And that's really hard for us to do. Like, who are you outside of your job title? Who are you outside of mom? Who are you outside of wife if you are married? Who are you outside of being a friend? Like, who are you and what makes you happy? And one of my favorite questions to ask women is, what do you want? And they all look at me and they go, well, what do you mean? What do you want? Well, I want to be a good mom. No, I know you love your kids. We all love our kids. What do you want? And it really stumps them. And it often takes, like, that simple question can take months to answer.
And I think it must be a very strange place to be into. And I completely relate for so many women and, like I said, mothers who like when you finally get the opportunity to be asked, what do you want? And not have an answer
Yeah.
because
Well,
they've
we
never
don't
really
get,
had the choice.
and they've never probably been asked.
Yeah.
Not in that direct of a, taking everybody else out of it, taking every label stripping everything away. You in front of me right now, what do you want?
And so when women go through this process, so they're releasing a lot of the beliefs and a lot of the social conditioning that they've gone through, and they've started to identify, well, what do I want to do now? And not just like the fun things, which is so important, but what kind of life do I want to create after this? What do you find that women are then able to do or able to get after they go through this process?
So I would use examples. So women go back to school. They get degrees, they upgrade, they whatever it is, wherever they are in their education journey. A lot of women go back to school. So many women start businesses. They have this creative side they've never been able to tap into. And now they have permission and freedom to tap into it. So go back to school, start a business. So many women focus on their home. So many times they're like, oh, I bought a pink rug. And I'm so guilty of this. I just redid my whole living room in pink. I was the woman who hated pink because it was, societally speaking, pink was girly. I was not girly. I was a tomboy. I rode horses. I played in the dirt. I played with my brother, street hockey and basketball. Like I was a tomboy and I was proud of it. I didn't wear pink. Now pink's one of my favorite colors now that I'm 47 and have shed everything that made me think that, I had to like rebel against this being a girl thing. I love wearing dresses now. Used to hate wearing dresses because again, I didn't want to be a girl in the way society wanted me to be a girl. Not sure if that makes sense, but so I rebelled against all the things that were girly. And yeah, now I have pink everywhere. So that's a big one. Women will message me. I painted my wall pink. I'm like, fantastic. So not the ways that you might think. I mean, some are big and travel, solo travel. So many women. I've gone on 2 solo trips. I know so many women after divorce that start to travel solo. Again, if you have children and the dad is a good man, just not a good partner, so to speak, then they're still a good dad. So the kids are usually 50-50. So it frees up time and energy. Not saying it's easy. I cried for the first couple years every time my daughter left. It's not easy, but you do get to a place where, wait, this is actually time that I can create something for me. And so we get to do that. There's so many examples of what women do, but the running club, they read books for the first time, like actual books that they want to read. They watch their own shows. They don't have to watch sports. They just have time for themselves.
I love that. I haven't read a book for myself. So, I have read Bananas and Pajamas and Peppa Pig so many times now.
Yes.
But that is just the stage of life I am currently in. And so, Nikki, where can my listeners find you?
So I'm on TikTok and Instagram and Facebook. Everything is at Healing You First Coaching. My website is www.healingyoufirstcoaching.com. I do regular workshops. So I have 2 workshops coming up in January. I'm not sure when this will air, but it's the start of January here. So I've got 2 in January. It would be specific to women in Canada because one is, I actually have a legal professional coming on to talk about the legal side. So it's more for women at the very beginning. So they're thinking about leaving or they're just starting and what do they need to do. And then I talk about the emotional journey that starts from that period. And then I do another one that's a bit more for women further along. And I do regular workshops. So I usually do at least 1 a month, sometimes 2 or 3. So they're really easy. They're live on Zoom. There's a replay that's sent out. So they're a really easy way for women to connect with me if that workshop resonates with where they're at in their journey.
Anyway, I'll link all of that in the description, wherever you are watching or listening from today. Thank you so much, Nikki, for coming and talking to us today.
Thank you so much for having me.